Okay, so this is part 3 of the measurements lecture, the final part, and it is about the conversions, not the conversions. So going to PowerPoint. Actually, let's go here first. We are going to be using conversions all throughout this course, all throughout chemistry, and they will get more and more complicated, but the basic concept is always the same. You're going to start with one unit, you're going to use a relationship between them and convert using this numerical relationship to the new unit. So a conversion factor, that's a relationship that we use to convert. It's a definition. Don't worry about that. So if I see this, 2.21 pounds equals 1 kilogram, this can be rewritten as a ratio. Now, a ratio you're used to seeing with the number with 2 dots and a number, but when it's written as a fraction, that's also a ratio if you have different units. So this can be written as a ratio or a fraction. It does not matter which one is on top, which one's on the bottom, because this is a relationship. This is saying 2.21 pounds equals is the same as 1 kilogram. There are 2.21 pounds in 1 kilogram. There's 1 kilogram in 2.21 pounds. 1 kilogram equals 2.21 pounds. You see, it's the same thing. Doesn't matter which order you say it, as long as your numbers are the same, it's the same relationship. It will matter for us which is on top and which is on the bottom, because the one on the bottom is the one we're getting rid of. So that's where it matters. Okay, how do we use them? When you have one unit, so here we have pounds, but you want to know what is that value in a different unit. So in this example, it's saying, what is this 130 pounds in kilograms? You use the conversion. So I'm going to switch to my whiteboard. So the example was, where is it? Okay, 130 pounds equals how many kilograms? And we're given the relationship. You won't be expected. You do need to use the relationships for metric if you're converting centimeters to meters, meters to kilometers. You need to know that because that's that metric scale. But standard units, you'll be given that relationship. So how do we solve this? You start with what you have. I have 130 pounds. Multiplied. Now write your relationship. What you want to get rid of goes on the bottom. I want to get rid of pounds. I want kilograms. So write your pounds on the bottom. Write your kilograms on the top. I always work with units first, especially if you have a long problem or a complicated problem. Working with just units before you put numbers in, it will help you create stepping stones to get to your answer. And also, if you do write something backwards, upside down, the wrong order, it's easy to erase the units and replace them. Numbers can confuse the issue. Okay, you say, but for this example, I'll just go ahead and write the numbers in because it's a simple example. So we know our relationship numbers are this because we were given this definition. And yes, put your 1 up there. All right, now, the pounds are going to cancel out because the numerator and denominator, they're going to cancel out. It's just basic math. So you cancel out the units you don't want, and you say, do I have what I'm looking for at the end? I do. Great. Now just do the math. Plug and play. 130 divided by 2.21. That's a conversion. That is how you do every single conversion, regardless how many you have, how long it is, whether we're doing stoichiometry, whether we're doing, because we're going to do a lot of more in-depth conversions as we go along. This is the basic process no matter what. Put your unit that you're getting rid of on the bottom. Put your relationship. Sometimes you might need to find the relationship. Sometimes you'll put what you're looking for up here, but you need a couple more steps to get there. That's okay. If you're just putting units first, you can do, it's easier to do. Then put the numbers in. Now, in this example, of course, we don't know how many sig figs this is. Is it 2 or 3? The slide I'm looking at says that it's 2, so we'll take their word for it. They know the context, we don't. So when you get your answer, so let me go to my calculator. I'm on the other computer. And divide 130 divided by 2.21. I get now, remember measurements, what I said, a number without a unit is useless. If I just wrote that, that's useless. You've got to have a unit for it to mean something. So get in the habit of units everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. But that's not my final answer, is it? Now the slide said that this is 2 sig figs, so we'll take their word for it. This is 3 sig figs. I'm multiplying. What do you do when you multiply? You count the number of sig figs. So your final answer has to be the lower number, which is 2. So I'm going to, that's this block. I'm going to round this up because that's an 8. So my answer is going to be 59 kilograms. Okay. The next slide, which I'm not going to switch over to right now, is converting 3.8 centimeters equals how many inches? All right. We're given a relationship that 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. When you see it written like that, you can rewrite it as a fraction. And it does not matter which one is on top. It only matters when you get ready to do the conversion. So there's my relationships. So let's solve that. What do you do? I wish I had more room. You start with what you have. What do I have? I have 3.8 centimeters. Okay, times, write your fraction. What you're trying to get rid of goes on the bottom. What you want goes on the top. Okay, cross out units. Do I have what I'm looking for? Yes. Great. Now plug in numbers. It's 2.54 centimeters. Be careful with this. I see a lot of people not paying attention and they write this upside down. So make sure your 2.54 is in the right place. Put units everywhere. Cross out your units to make sure it's correct, but also it's a double check that you didn't write this upside down, because that's a very common mistake. So if you don't go through the step of crossing out your units, you are setting yourself up to make that mistake. So if I do this on my calculator, so 3.8 divided by 2.54, I get, I'm going to squeeze it in here, 1.496, and there's a lot more numbers, but we'll go right there. There's my unit. Now, am I done? No. Now you've got to put your answer in the correct number of sig figs. This has 2 sig figs. This has 3 sig figs. So you are multiplying to use the smaller number, which is 2. So your answer has to be 2 sig figs, which is these guys. So you're going to round up to 1.5 inches, and that is your final answer. So I'm going to go back to the slide. All right, so that's when you're changing units from standard to metric. What about metric to metric? This is all by the power of 10. There are a couple different ways you can do this. Because I get confused easily, I am prone to making mistakes. This is one of my areas of error. It's important to know where you get confused, because then you know where to double check yourself. This is one of mine. I will just put the wrong number down. So, or I'll say 100 meters per 1 centimeter. So because I know this, I am very careful and I step this out. And if I do a metric conversion, I always go around meter. So this is centimeters is smaller than a meter. And then I'll go kilometers is greater than a meter. So I will always go to meter step by step. Otherwise, I'm going to put the wrong number down. So if you are more comfortable taking it step by step, you're actually better off, because as we get into these more complicated conversions later, you are more likely to not make a mistake and double check yourself. However, if you can do it in one step, absolutely go for it. And one step is that you are able to do the scientific notation, the conversion all in one fell swoop. So centimeters is two decimal places on one side, on this side of the decimal. Kilometers is 3 on the other side. And so you go, okay, that's 5 decimal places, and there's your conversion. So whatever works for you is what you want to use. Don't feel pressured though, in case your sibling or somebody else can do math really fast in their head. Don't feel like you have to. You do what works for you. Okay. When you have, like I said, we're going to have multiple conversions. It's the same concept, but you just simply, these are stepping stones. What you did for the first example, put down what you want to get rid of. You repeat that process until you end up with the unit you're looking for. So that's why I always just do units. When I cross them out, I get what I'm looking for, then I go back and put in numbers. So think of these as stepping stones. You're trying to cross a river to get to the other side, and you have to use these relationships to make the units cross out to get to the correct one. It's kind of fun sometimes. So here's an example. I'm going to do this on the whiteboard because I think it helps to actually work it out as I'm talking about it. So the question is 1.2 meters equals how many inches. Now, I've had some students who put what they have. You start with what you have, always. And I've had some that would put what they're looking for over here, and then they would fill in between to get from here to there. And that makes sense to me. So that's another approach you can take. Okay, you can't see the inches, but inches. And then, you know, you go through the steps to get to inches. Now, what do we know? We know that 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch. That looks like Lynn, but it's inch. And we know the relationship between meter and centimeter. There are 100 centimeters in 1 meter, or 10 to the 2. And those are relationships you will have memorized. So how do I get from here to there? Well, first, you get rid of what you don't want, and you find a relationship you can put at the top. I do not have a direct meter to inch relationship, but I do have an inch to centimeter. So first, I'm going to go from meters to centimeters. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to run out of room. Now, what do I have? I have centimeters. Notice I haven't put numbers in yet because I want to get my order correct. I have centimeters now, but I want inches. So let's put what we want to get rid of on the bottom. And according to our relationship, I do have one that puts inches to centimeters. And now if I cross out my unit, oh, look, I ended up with what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to put numbers in. And see, I just caught myself because this is where I wanted to put 100 down here. That's my area of error. It's just a thing. So I double checked myself and I went, oh, no, girl. 100 goes up here, 1 goes down there. There are 100 centimeters or 1 times 10 to the 2, whatever you prefer, in 1 meter. There is 1 inch for every 2.54 centimeters because we're given that definition. Great. My units have canceled out. I ended up with what I want. Now you just do the math. Do your math in one fell swoop. Do the numbers across the top, hit equals, and then divide by bottom. Don't stop and write your numbers down in between. That's a good chance for error. So it's going to be 1.2 times 100 equals divided by 2.54. And then this is all multiplication. Now, this is an exact number. This 100 centimeters per meter is not a measurement that can fluctuate depending on who's making it. This is an exact number. So actually the only thing, and that's a definition, so that's an exact number. The only thing that actually matters for sig figs is the 1.2. So you don't include your metric conversions for your sig figs. It's called, that's an exact number. It's defined. If you go back to that slide, you'll see when it says a definition is an exact number. So you have 2 sig figs. So your answer will be in 2 sig figs. So let's go back to the slide. So they work through it. And now, all right, here the person developed the slide actually did it a little differently. They put 1 centimeter on the top and 0.01 meter on the bottom. That's perfectly acceptable. It's just a different way of writing it. I choose not to do it that way. So you do what works for you. It's the same value. So when you do the math, you end up with 47.244. We said there are 2 sig figs. So your final answer is 47 inches, not just 47. If there's no unit, it's meaningless. Okay? So these are the steps you are going to carry out. Okay, so you can work through this one. This is a very important common mistake. If you cube your unit, you have to cube the number as well. So let's go back to, and you will get a problem like this on a test. And I think it's part of the lab as well. So the slide was saying if 1 centimeter equals 10 millimeters, which is true, then isn't this the same? This is what the slide was saying, and no, it is not. When you cube your unit, you have to cube the number, and I'm going to walk this through so you can see. So if I say 1 centimeter equals how many millimeters cubed, cubic millimeter, that's a volume measurement. Well, so there's our relationship. 1 centimeter cubed, if I cube this whole thing, my 1 cubed is still a 1. So I can convert 1 centimeter to a cubic centimeter because it's the 1 is cubed. So if I rewrite my question, because this I think is what actually is in the lab. So 1 cubic centimeter is equal to how many cubic millimeters? You cannot do this. 10. That is not correct. The relationship is 10 millimeters per centimeter. Okay. To get cubed, this relationship is fine. You cube the whole thing. And the lack of doing this is an extremely common mistake. So what does this mean? This means 10 cubed, millimeters cubed, 1 cubed, centimeters cubed. The only number that's actually going to be affected is this. 10 cubed is 1, 1, 2, 3 is 1,000. So when you are converting cubed, squared, any dimension, you have to, you take the relationship, the non-cubed or squared relationship. So, you know, 1, you're going to cube this. You write down the normal relationship, but if you need it as a cubic relationship, you cube everything. Or squared, or I think those are the only powers that you will use. So look at the slide, get that clear in your head, and just keep it in mind, in the back of your mind, because that's a very common mistake. You will see it. You'll probably even see it on the final. Okay. All right. So that is conversions, introduction to conversions. You're going to be doing conversions all throughout the semester. So the more careful you are with writing them clearly, putting units everywhere, crossing out those units, you'll be in good shape for when we get to the more complicated conversions. And again, get practice doing the complete set of calculations in your calculator without stopping to write something down halfway. And you can use the memory key as well for that. So, okay. So be ready with your questions tomorrow. Ask me questions so that we get this sorted out. All right, guys. See you tomorrow.